And then on the book side too, there's just this, oh, you have a book. Like we're still wired to,
Right.
it just does. Even
Yeah.
logically, we know that anyone could write a book. We also know that not everyone does.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Bookmore Show. It's Stuart Bell here, and today joined by Jason Croft. Jason, how you doing?
Doing great. So glad to be here.
I'm excited too. So this is going to be an interesting episode. We were introduced through a mutual connection on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago and had a great conversation. We're coming to it from different perspectives, different business, well, not different perspectives, different businesses, but a similar perspective in the tool isn't necessarily the thing, the tool is a thing to achieve the thing. So, with that slightly random introduction, why don't you give the audience a background on what you and the company do over there?
Yeah, so the specialty right now in media leads is we're helping coaches, consultants specifically, and exactly what you're talking about in a different way than most people are doing it. Just like your books are a tool, they're a mechanism, right? To have that first contact and used as a sales tool instead of what's typically thought of as the sort of content marketing piece. People think podcast, video. Oh yeah, just put out stuff for years, and eventually somebody will be interested, right? And all the promises of content marketing of the long-term effects, they're real and they're true. I just prefer for myself and my clients to have that also immediate benefit. So
Right.
instead of just putting out content and hoping something happens, let's make this beneficial from episode one of your show, right? Of the launch. So who are you talking to? Let's bring in your ideal clients to talk to. Let's bring in strategic partners. Let's make sure there's some solo content so that if one person listens, they know exactly what you do, how you help people, why they should reach out, and how they can do so. And it's a piece that's missed in so many areas to use this as a business building tool
Right.
because if you're paying somebody to help you or to do it for you, there's a cost dollar amount. If you're doing it yourself, there's a giant time, cost, and effort. And you need to make sure that it's worth it from the beginning, or you just won't stick with it.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? I think people, a lot of the industry on both of our sides are filled with organizations that come from the discipline. So from our perspective, it's filled with a lot of publishers. And from your perspective, I'm sure it's filled with a lot of producers and audio-based people who come from the content world. And our approach collectively and individually of thinking about the tool isn't the product isn't the tool, the conversation, the opportunity of the tool allows that to be delivered, the thing to be delivered, but layer on top of it the reason for doing it, the job of work, the outcome focused attention, so that it actually makes sense. So you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it. It's not a build it and they will come type thing. It's intentionality around it. Is that a conversation that you find yourself having to educate people on, or do people come to you because they know your approach is more focused on that?
It's usually that education process still at this point.
Yeah.
They've heard the word podcast, and that's why I talk with my ideal client for a number of reasons, but in that coaching space, in that consulting space, because it's already been in their mind, right? I know I should do that personal branding stuff, right? Those are the key words you usually hear. And they're like, I know I should do it. Probably should do a podcast, but they don't have those specifics that will kind of push them over to the edge to make it a priority in their business.
Right.
Instead, it's yeah, that I could see kind of how that would help or would be enjoyable or something else. What I help them see is the business specifics. Here's the ROI behind it, right? When you use this as the one marketing activity you have to deal with in terms of instead of all these vast things, you make it the hub of everything else you're doing. It becomes a little easier and it becomes more valuable too. Easier to wrap your head around and can sort of steer people to all your marketing, but easier to wrap your head around and oh, okay, I need to focus on conversations. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm a coach. That's what I do well anyway. That's what I know. moves the world for me are conversations. So I can just be more intentional about those, have those, and then that spits out to your social content, your all of these other things, and you make that your hub. It just seems a little less daunting, this whole marketing thing that I have to do in addition to coaching and running a business.
I think that's a great point. That daunting element of making it simple and straightforward and an easy first step to take. If you were to say to someone that they either had to write the next great American novel or the Bible on a particular subject, or if you said to someone that they had to recreate NPR and all of the machinations that go around a content machine, or Red Bull, look at Red Bull as an organization and the kind of media giant that is, completely overwhelming. And I think it does such a disservice to people where they're comparing themselves to those organizations. It's a lot more freeing to think about the job of work of this thing that we're creating, whether it's a podcast or a book, is to just engage people and take that first step. It's not to entertain them. We're not charging for it. We're not, this is the mechanism to get in conversation about the thing that I can help. So I think to your point, it really takes the pressure off and helps them take that first step. Do
Yeah, when
people
you
see
can,
it?
I was just gonna say too, to it, not only on the mechanism itself, but also when you can really zoom in, again, both on a book aspect or a show aspect, and realize that most of us, you know, three more clients, hey, that's huge, you know?
Right,
And and it's so easy because we're human, because we're just wired this way. It's so easy to go like, oh, only 1,000 people saw my post. Like, are you kidding me?
right.
A
Yeah,
1,000 people? You need three, you know?
yeah,
So it's the same thing writing a book. You don't need an Amazon bestseller, Wall Street Journal
right,
bestseller to get three. You need to write this very specific book, your specific type of client needs, put that in front of them, physically, digital, hand it to
right.
them. You do that for 100 people, you're going to find three. And
Yeah,
it's even, I have to constantly remind myself, like, okay, I'm looking for one person this month, right? Yeah. And it just, I think that helps take the pressure off as well.
yeah. Yeah, it's a great point. The whole kind of vanity-metrics problem. I was actually, so we talked before, we do a couple of podcasts here and there for some people. It's definitely not what we specialize in at all. But one of those clients was, we were talking last week because they were looking for stats from Spotify and Apple Music on Apple Podcasts on their download numbers. And I find myself having a conversation because they've changed staff a couple of times. I had a conversation saying, that's fine, we can share those numbers, but just to reiterate a point that we made at the beginning, we don't care about those numbers. Like, we collectively don't care about those numbers. You agreed you don't care about those numbers because the job of work was to have something to send an email out about, to give to the sales teams to say, oh, we just did a podcast with John Smith talking about such and such in the oil and gas industry. Made me think of you. By the way, if you've got time next week, let's jump on a call. The whole purpose of what it's trying to do. So to your point, the numbers that for the majority of people listening, we're talking about trying to start conversations with single or low double digit numbers of people each month. It's not getting to 100,000 downloads or going viral on something, whatever that means.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's that conversation bridging the gap between expectations and the real job of work. I think sometimes, and again, talking from the book perspective, sometimes we see that it takes 10 units of energy for people to do anything. And if they put all 10 units into the project, then they get to the end of the line, the show's recorded or the book's written, and it's, oh, thank goodness for that. I don't have to do anything else, or I don't have energy to do anything else. How much of a expectation setting or bridging conversation is it to say, okay, well, you can just do it and press live and then it will sit there, but that's not really going to move the needle. I need you to save 2 units of energy to do this next step. How challenging is it or built into the system is it to encourage people to do that bit?
It's interesting to put it that way. My focus for myself and my clients is certainly on that first bit, meaning it's all about that conversation. It's 90% about that conversation. I think the 8 bits and 2 bits, I think that's a good amount to talk about though, because of course you've got this asset you've just created that will grow over time, and that why wouldn't you put it out there? And I certainly, hey, here's what I do. Here, when I talk to a client, they've got a show and I'm putting, all that's the promotional stuff together for them. Here's the guest follow up. We're having that conversation from the very beginning, right? And
Right.
here's the system in place and monitoring that along the way as they make their show. I certainly put more emphasis on that first, the 8 bits, right? Getting
Yeah.
that in there
Right.
because if you do it the way I talk about doing it, where you're talking to your ideal clients, your strategic partners, you could throw that episode in the trash and it was still beneficial, right? Of
Right.
course you wouldn't. And why would you?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
more beneficial, to have it out there
Yeah.
for all those
I
reasons.
know what you mean, though, but doing it right from the start means it's more effective. The end product was kind of fit for purpose right from the beginning, rather than we did something and now need to do something with it. It's now we're doing this thing for a
Yeah.
particular reason.
At the same time, my weakest point in show creation is growing a big, massive audience, is having that distribution out there. I'm sure part of that has to do with where I put those units,
Right.
right? I absolutely agree with someone to put way more time on the marketing side of it than the creation. If it's solo, if it's anything, I haven't gone that route yet, so I don't
Yeah.
speak as though, here's what to do with it, and I haven't grown an audience of millions either. Yeah.
Yeah, but to the point you made before, it's because it's not necessary. Like there's a certain the whole kind of minimum effective dose approach of I think that's why we resonated when we talked about it. So the 8 units that sticking with the 8 and the 2 at some point this analogy is going to collapse, but it's working at the moment. So the 8 that you put into it, at least it's coming from the perspective of knowing that it's for a particular there's a marketing outcome, there's a reason for doing it. So it's not like the NPR example of their 9.5 units of effort into the creation and all of the. I was watching do you know David Cross, the comedian? He was in
Yeah,
Arrested
yeah.
Development. So he's got a podcast that I saw on YouTube, and it's part of a network called Headgum. And obviously, because I clicked on one of the videos and I see the algorithm suggesting lots of other ones. So you can see the Headgum network of podcasts because they look very similar. The backdrop's very the same and the font's very the same, even though they move from show to show. And reading between the lines, I think they rent space in like LA and New York, and then they get all of the hosts in over a 2 week period and record everything and stack it and do it that way around. But he was saying that there are maybe 25, 30 episodes in now, and he was joking with someone else saying, oh well, obviously people have been telling me to do this for years, but you don't make any there's no money in this, you don't make any money in this, but it gets the audience. When I now do a show in New York, there's some of this audience now know about it, because otherwise when I was doing the show in New York, there's a whole swathe of people who wouldn't necessarily see the marketing for that show. So it was interesting looking at it from our perspective, because he was talking about it as if he'd been convinced to do the podcast by a traditional network where advertising revenue and the hook and the traditional setup was the thing. But 30 shows in, he was realizing that, oh no, the size of the audience doesn't matter. This is never going to be an
Mm.
NPR equivalent. But the 1,000 people who are my fans and now get to hear when I'm saying I'm doing a show in New York next week. So that balance, I think, where on the book side of things as well, we put more emphasis on the 2 than the 8. But what I liked about our conversation is that you come to the 8, but still with the purpose of the 2, if anyone's following
Yeah.
along with those numbers.
Yeah. Hopefully there's like a beautiful mind thing going on with everybody making that calculation right now and they're figuring it out. It's
Overlay
all
the
right.
overlay and but that makes sense, I think, because we're
Yeah,
both
and
coming to it from the job of work perspective.
absolutely. And in David Cross's example, it's kind of the intangibles, right? Like you can't measure that. There's a guy named Chris Walker on LinkedIn who talks about sort of the, dark social or dark, dark
Right.
metrics a little
Yeah.
bit from you just cannot track them, but they're there.
Yeah.
There's a correlation by having this content out there. And now, and then you get little peaks, by having it takes a conversation. I've got a client right now. She's got a new show, not huge numbers and downloads and all of that. And she was telling me a couple of weeks ago, she had 3 different calls, like sales calls come in. One of them became a client, and she didn't know. these from any other. She assumed it was from a talk she gave and maybe there. And every single one of them, she was like, "So, how did you even know about me?" She's like, "Oh, your podcast, your show.
Right.
I've listened to every episode."
Yeah.
She's like, "What are you talking about? I didn't know you." Like here's
Yeah.
it. That
There's no
was
sign.
yeah. And
Yeah.
unless you ask, unless you know, so those little things pop up, and that's the juice of all this. And there's those intangibles that are just out there. And I lead with what I led with, in this show of the benefit and why to do it. And it really is a sales focused thing, but there are it's benefit after benefit of this stuff from being the greatest networking,
Right.
network building tool that you can have. You can have this reciprocal, if someone's giving you referrals, like, oh, I'm going to introduce you to three people, and in your head, you're sitting there like, I don't have anyone to introduce you to. You're like, why don't you come and be on the show? And, we'll have, it's something you
Takes
can
the
give.
pressure off.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's all these layers to why to have this that, and then on the book side too, there's just this, oh, you have a book. Like we're still wired to,
Right.
it just does. Even
Yeah.
logically, we know that anyone could write a book. We also know that not everyone does.
Yeah.
So there's still that differentiator. It's a big deal when you have a show, you have a book, you have those things, and any business, any person should put these things in place for that differentiation in there.
Yeah. We talk about the books as being a great start of the conversation. So top of the funnel type stuff of going from an unknown invisible prospect to a visible prospect. But the point that the minority of people take any action in the short term and the majority of them take action in the long term. I look at it myself. I mean, I've got far too many tabs open on my computer because there's things on each of those tabs that in a perfect world, I would get to the thing on that tab, but I'm probably not going to get to my computer will crash at one point and then they'll all go away and that will kind of make the decision for me. But that's the real benefit of the podcast. It's the minority of people who want to take action straight away. A book is great for addressing those people with an immediate intentional desire or reason to take action now. But to have the podcast, to be able to follow up with people for the rest of forever with something of value, reinforcing the message that got them in the conversation in the first place. It's just such a great opportunity to be intersecting with them, intersecting with me on the day that, oh, I've got a unit of energy that I can look at this tab. And if the podcast email comes through or release, or there's something that I see on social media that reminds me, oh yeah, I did mean to get to that. And now today's the day that the planets align and I can do something with it. As you were mentioning, that intangible way of measuring that, I mean, it's almost impossible from any kind of numerical metric point of view. One of
Yeah.
the one of the examples that I give talking about kind of like dead lists, because we get it all the time. So the premise of the book is to get names, to collect the names and then use email to stay in touch with them over the long term. And the fact that the book was the positioning piece to begin with just amplifies that conversation. But this idea of the emails, and I think this goes for podcast metrics as well. A friend of ours was a realtor up by Cape Ann, up by Boston. So he'd had a list for years and years, decided to purge everyone off the list who hadn't opened an email or hadn't interacted in whatever way that means in the last couple of years or so. So purged all of these names off the list. 6 months goes by and he gets a call from someone who says, Kenny, I'm glad that I got hold of you. Oh, it was a voicemail because he played the voicemail for us. So Kenny gets a voicemail from someone. Hey, Kenny, it's Bob. I'm glad I managed to get hold of you. I don't know what happened. I must have got off your list somehow. Anyway, receiving your market watch for years. Unfortunately, my sister passed away recently and we're going to sell her house and we're going to sell our house and then consolidate somewhere else. Anyway, I hope this number's correct. I had to phone another realtor in town to get your number, but give me a call. It's 555, whatever. So they ended up selling two oceanfront properties in Cape Ann, like multi-million dollar properties, each of them.
Wow.
But Kenny had purged it. So from the podcast perspective, if you're just looking at the numbers and saying, oh, the download number here is not great, or the open rate here is not great, you don't know where that other person is just sat there slowly consuming it, enjoying it, no real sign of life. But when the day is the day for them, like you were saying with the client before, that's the day that they raise their hand and, oh, I've listened to every episode. I feel like I know you.
Oh yeah. And thank goodness he had done a good job and that person wanted that badly.
Right.
How many people?
would have
city
just,
purge that go to
who
that
was that
effort,
guy again?
but
I
would
can't
have called.
remember.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. 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 I always laugh on that story because I think about the intermediate realtor that answered the call, and the guy said, "Oh, hey, yeah, I've got two houses to sell beachfront. Oh, that sounds great. How can I help you? Well, do you have Kenny's number?"
exactly.
But to your point, I mean, that idea that nurturing this relationship for the long haul, knowing that it's for the long haul, and having the confidence that what you're creating is putting valuable stuff out there into the world, and whether you only deliver that content to the 5 people who do ultimately become clients, or whether you deliver that content to the 500 other people that it's not time for them, there's no additional cost. You're still putting the same effort into getting those people. So whether that vanity metric was 5 or 500 or 5 million, it doesn't make any difference. The job and work
Yeah.
of what we're trying to do is to nurture leads and get clients for business. We're not in the podcast business. We're not in the being an author business. It's
Yeah.
the team's conversation.
And I encourage folks to just put yourself in that consumer space. So for me, I know when I first get into somebody's ecosystem, however I got there, I heard them interviewed on somebody else's podcast. Now I'm going to go check out their podcast or grabbed a webinar and like, oh, this is resonant. I want everything. In that moment, I want everything. I want a book because there's a certain time of day every day. I'm going to read something. I wish this person had a book because I would read that in my time, right? And I would listen to that podcast and I would listen to the audiobook. I would go like, and I think many of us are wired that way. Like certainly we have our preferences on how we consume information and stuff like that, but we want and it may be a short window. It may be 2 weeks, it may be three
Right.
months, but in that time, and we're in that person's ecosystem, we want everything in all these different ways. So give it to them, as many
Yeah.
ways as you can show up for that reason, the better.
Yeah. It is interesting, isn't it? That psychology of people when they're in the discovery phase. I always remember I got a few grey hairs now in my beard, so I can't get away with making school stories too often now because it's too far in the past. But there was a friend of mine when we were in school would come back after every summer vacation and was like the expert in some new skill. He was just one of those, wasn't, I don't, it was back in the day before the word autistic was invented, but the kind of, when you think about that real deep dive on the thing, as you kind of think about
Yeah.
what's the movie with the Rain Man type approach of really deep diving on a complete thing. So he would do the same. But I mean, this was back in the late 80s, early 90s, maybe. But he would consume everything. Like magazines, it was pre-internet days. So magazines, books from the library. I mean, it would have even been before podcasts and audio. So I can't think what else it would have been. But this idea that you get into the phase, and as you said, whether it's 2 weeks or 2 months of just consuming as much as you can. Because I think as business owners, it's easy for us to forget the 101 level that people are desperate to consume when they're interested in something because it's second nature. It's like driving stick shift. Like once you've done it for 20 years, you don't even think about it. But the first few times that you're doing it, every single movement, you're kind of trying to absorb as much feedback as you can. So that idea of someone, when the time is right for them, they are in an all-consuming world, and if you're not satiating that appetite, then they'll look somewhere else, and the risk is that will lead them down a path that doesn't end up at your front door. It's
Oh yeah.
yeah,
And and think of them too as we can't bypass we people who are not in this game for the audience, the fame, anything like that. They see that as nonsense. Don't be too quick to dismiss that part. You don't have to be. You make the if you have that attitude, you can be the best version of quote unquote famous, in your industry because you're not in it for that. But if you realize what a means to an end that is, and it is a positioning tool, and you don't have to approach it in this egotistical way. But again, like a lot of things we're talking about today, they get lumped into these
yeah,
buckets, right?
yeah,
And it seems like, oh, you just, oh, I'm going to be famous, whatever. It's like, well, no, we're not talking that, but there is a level of it that, especially I'm talking to a coach who has the ability to transform people's lives. And by transforming their life, they transform their families' lives, and that ripple effect and ripple effect. You bet I think you should be on a stage. You bet you should have a show and have these things that, again, just because of how we're wired, like, oh, they have their own show.
Yeah,
They've written a book. Okay. They just they get put in that little niche higher
yeah,
in that positioning, and that stuff is important.
yeah.
You don't care your opinion on it. Honestly, it's just a fact. Those things are important to people as a whole, right?
And
Like,
it,
and let's not shy away from that.
yeah, it is interesting. I fall into the same camp. Like my natural tendency is to be behind the scenes, not in front of the scenes. And the thing that's the most infuriating is when you see what appears to be somewhat superficial things out there that are getting traction, and you can get this feeling of, I don't know if condescending is the right word, but certainly frustration of, I'm looking at I use the SEO example sometimes. You look at an SEO company's page and they'll have listed on there, we'll get you indexed on Google and the search engines. I mean, that's clearly a BS thing to say, because 99.99, keep going on the nines, the search engines doing it themselves. So to see that superficial thing out there, it's frustrating. And the same thing from when you look at personality, like the cult of personality, it seems very cultish and superficial. But the downside of that is the exact point that you're saying. I individually have, it's a lost opportunity. I've been doing this for 10 years now. I mean, more people should be aware of what we do than some of the other companies that do more of a better job of being out there than we are, but deliver a worse product and have been doing it for less long. So it's definitely there is it was maybe net neutral before. It didn't really matter
Mm.
one way or another. You could either do it one way or another, but now it's definitely a negative of not having these pieces, because I think people get on the path of heading towards you and they're happy to stay on that path, but they really want reassurance that they're in the right place. So just like 20 years ago, if you didn't have a website, who cared? 15 years ago, if you didn't have a website, oh, well, maybe that's a bit questionable. Today, if you don't have a website, that's a clear ding against it and will push people away. So I'm not saying that books or podcasts are at that stage, but it's definitely another check in the box of credibility or reassurance that people are in the right space.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting how, it is a fine line, right? It's a fine line when I put that message out to my ideal clients, because my ideal clients aren't interested in that. They're the coaches who are, they're killing it. They do an amazing job. Like they are operating this high level and have this level of confidence that they can change a life. But there's that little itch, that little like they have what you described. They look out at the world and the people doing, being way less effective with a
Right.
massive audience and a massive following. And yes, while everything I said at the beginning is true of, okay, we need 3 people this month, there is, again, I can't argue with the fact that more is better in so many ways, right? Like, yes, if you can build that and grow that over time, why not do that to give yourself that, again, more of a reach and ripple effect? Because a lot of times then too, it's, hey, my business is fine. I'm getting to that legacy piece now. I want
Right.
to reach more people who are, I don't have room for another one-on-one client, but I know I can help people in these other ways over time. And you talk about seeing the frustrating folks out there, like, oh my gosh, this person's at this level or whatever. And it does. And I have that visceral reaction to it. And I'm just like, oh my God, really. And then I stop and I go, okay, what can I learn from what they're doing?
Right.
Because I would never in a million years do this and this that they're doing. That's either shady or poor quality and all that stuff. But what are they doing that's right in
Yeah.
finding those nuggets? And I've done that more in this last year of just learning from folks who, yeah, we probably wouldn't hang out. We wouldn't be friends. Like I would, I don't want to hang around this person necessarily, but wow, they are a genius in this area,
Yeah.
in this way, and I'm going to learn everything I can.
Yeah.
And I think that's a open-minded, expanding
Right.
way to kind of approach all this.
It's funny, isn't it? It's taking the way that we would talk to potential clients about why they should do a podcast or write a book. It's saying, hey, there's all of these other things out there that are in the category, but not in the way that we would do it. And then apply that in the exact same. scenario here. Those other people, the people who are getting the bigger audiences but aren't necessarily doing it in the way that we would do it, that's fine as well. Take the pieces that work and ignore the pieces that don't work. It's, I think for your audience as well, I mean, it's such a making podcast, whether it's a video podcast or audio podcast, it's the video component of it is almost a transmission mechanism, but the way that it goes into people's brains is still through the ears. It's the
Mm.
words transmitted by the video that goes in the ears. So the fact that coaches, particularly that you're working with, have such a audible based, tripping over the technical terms, but it's a very all based speciality. They're talking to people and getting people to talk to them. So the fact that people can hear their voice repeatedly, it builds up such a rapport before they even get on the phone. So that as an amplifier towards making the business side of it go faster, that has to be such a win for them.
Oh yeah, and that's sheer numbers from following the folks who are, who are doing kind of everything from YouTube to the podcast. It's like they get bigger. What was it? Bigger. I was just looking at the study that they had put out, and it was bigger, either interaction or, I mean, there's obviously like SEO gains and all that stuff from the YouTube side of things,
Right,
but they got more buyers from podcast. Like it
right,
was trackable. It was like the people who regularly listen were these folks who they were showing up, and it was an easier sell. It was,
right.
yeah, I know what you do. I know what And I was on the was with a partner of mine and on a receiving end of a sales call a few months ago. I was just sort of there in support, but I had followed the person who was this guy was working for on the sale for a while. And he's going down the list of everything. And in my head, I'm just like, yeah, I know. I know that. I know this is who he's looking for. I know this is what he wants. Like, that's why I'm here.
Yeah,
That's why I brought this other person to have this conversation, because I knew all of this, because he states it so clearly in every episode. Like, this is who I want to work with. This is who I do not want to work with.
yeah,
If you're like this, don't even show, and it does. It shortcuts that so well.
yeah. We had a book client who's a podiatrist. We did a podcast a couple of months ago now. So, podiatrist has written a couple of books. The latest one was called My Damn Toe Hurts, about whatever the condition is that would make your toe hurt. And he was describing it as people come in knowing what the procedure is going to be. So, that removing all of the trying to sell people on the idea of this is the thing that you suggest that they should do, shortcutting the not the technical procedure, but the broad strokes of what will happen. And he said he had an element of he was sat there in a consultation with someone, and like three-quarters of the way through, they just said, "Oh, I've just realized you're the Paul who wrote the book." Oh, yeah, yeah. So there was that element of additional kind of credibility because he was the person that they'd consumed before. So knowing how the conversation was going to go, and to your point, they turned up already predisposed to being aligned with the outcome. It's so
So
much better.
that's great to hear that example from. We don't hear that example, right? We hear the marketing and the sales call, that side of
Right.
example from a doctor's level working as well. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a great medium. And I think the ability, particularly post COVID, now everyone's so familiar with Zoom. I mean, that was a game changer really for anything video based. The fact that it's
Hmm.
so easy and people are comfortable with being in front of a camera, the fact that I mean, they've not necessarily got fancy backdrops, but at least they kind of, there's a comfortableness around having a camera pointing somewhere into their room, and most people have got something around a mic that's better than just a laptop microphone. So it just shortcuts the mechanism for them. So as the people are listening, and I'm super conscious of your time, it's kind of a standing joke that I get to this point in every podcast and say, I can't believe how quick it's gone, but it really has gone quick again. I want to give people a little bit of encouragement or a boot off the fence if they're thinking about it. So the people who you work with there, the barrier to them getting started or any concerns, what would you say to people who've thought about it but not yet pulled the trigger?
Yeah, it's get some help with it. That doesn't mean it needs to be even just having that advice and really take it into, I guess it's two parts, right? Because it does happen, right? That overwhelm. They're either like the idea of that whole thing seems overwhelming, or they come into it with just like, oh yeah, yeah, podcast, cool. You just pick up your phone and kind of talk. You can just do that now, right? Like, and then they see everything that needs to get created, to launch, and they're like, oh my goodness. But then we break that down and step by step. So there is that piece. Once you get into it, and it's this, let's just take it step by step. Get this. You don't
Yeah.
have to do it all in a day. And here's this. But a bigger, kind of a zoomed out, is more of what I was talking about earlier. In get in the reason why. See how this is going to integrate into your business. And if it's not, well, that's problem number one, right? Like and how could it, right? How could I do this thing in a way that it's an extension of what I'm doing already? It is, you know, it's what I hope every first sales call would be, right? It's that
Right.
having guests
Yeah.
on and bringing that in. And for those who are like, okay, all the technical, that's great. I just, how am I going to interview somebody? How am I going to just start practicing, right? Start practicing, doing the reps. You don't even have to push record. Again, thank goodness to Zoom and all the online video. That's people are just automatically more comfortable than we were, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But so much of it is just doing the reps, and you can really play and have fun. And I would tell you, well, two things I want before we wrap. Number one, along those lines, you can do that with ChatGPT right now. I
Right.
mean, if you have the, $20 a month for ChatGPT 4 and a mobile phone, you can have a conversation and have an interview back and forth, and it's nuts. Like, we live in the future, everybody. Like, it is crazy. So even if you don't have that friend you want to bring on and bother or whatever, you can sit there and practice with it, and well, I promise you, you will be amazed at the naturalness of this conversation. It's because I was just doing it a few days ago.
Yeah. It's
It was
otherworldly,
wild.
isn't it? Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then along those lines, I'll just to encourage everybody, what I encourage everybody to do and nobody ever wants to do, besides doing the reps, is every single episode you do, every practice you do, listen to it back, watch it back. If that is your concern, is to be better at this interviewing thing or even solo episodes, it is life changing to sit there and review your stuff. And it's the last thing you want to do. Nobody wants, everyone hates the sound of their voice. Everyone hates how they look. It's just a thing. But I promise you, from having done hundreds and hundreds of episodes, you just have to do it. And you reach a point very quickly, honestly, even if it's 20, 30 episodes in, you go from this subjective, like, oh, oh my God, I can't stand my voice. I gotta listen to that again. Oh, I'm talking nasally. Oh, I do, and you go to this objective. It hits at some point and you become very objective and you're like, oh wow, that was a really good transition there. That was a great
Right.
question. Oh, that was oh, I need to work on that. And there's a switch that happens in
Yeah.
there. And then it becomes the greatest just communication tool or communication improvement tool, regardless of recording it or not. Just in person, improves because of it, right? And you see all those things, you hear all those things that you're and ahs, of
Yeah.
course, but maybe it's that same word you use only, ending every sentence with it, right? And there's levels to it because if you listen to everything back, you'll get annoyed. If you have to edit your own stuff, oh, that's a whole new level of
Right. You hear
yelling
it.
at yourself that you'll
Apparently,
learn.
from the editing and the bits and pieces that we see in the podcast here, I never realized how much I say, oh, you hit the nail on the head. Apparently, if you'd have asked me before I started doing podcasts, I would have never thought I did that. But from the transcripts, apparently I say it a lot. A word of
Yeah.
encouragement for anyone who's concerned about that. We're 170 episodes in, and I've got a dodgy UK accent and big gaps in my teeth. So if I can do it and stick on video, then everyone can do it.
Whatever. Look at that magnificent beard. You can't,
And my
man. You should
recently
sell
hiding
the
behind
beard. You
it.
should sell a beard kit for people who want to start. Like, there's
This
confidence
is
in that beard.
This is the secret sauce. You and I have we're giving the game away now. It's the beard that gets it for everyone.
That's right. And to have your very own beard, send the 1995 straight to Stuart for,
Branded merch. Jason, it's been really fun. I think hopefully the audience that are listening to this are people who have raised their hand as interested in the book. So I think the underlying idea that there are things out there like books and podcasts that a lot of people are using just for the sake of having them, but a small amount of orchestration can really make the difference, and it can just support the marketing and sales and business development goals that you've got, because it opens up so many doors. A book is something that kind of is seen as this huge credibility piece that other people don't have, and people receive it as a gift, and it establishes an authority. And a video podcast, or podcast in general, does the same thing, but also allows you to communicate your voice. And it's also got such a long tail compared with the book. The book is great in the moment, but the podcast really has a long tail and all of these opportunities that you mentioned. So where can people find out more about what you guys do?
Yeah, happy to tell that, but I just want to emphasize, I love that order too. I love get your book done and then on that podcast, because it's the perfect mechanism to send people, if you do get their attention over on the podcast side and over time and you grow, that's where you send them. Hey, is
Right,
this resonating for you? Hey, do you have this problem? If you're listening to this, you probably do. Go check out my book. I mean, it's the
right.
greatest, like send them to an action, give them something to do other than just
Generally go to my
subscribe and
website.
like,
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And actually,
gets them out of there.
now you mentioned that, being a guest on other people's shows as well, which inevitably happens when you have a show, turning up, and rather than people saying generally, although admittedly I just asked you and interrupted where people can find out more about what you do. But in another scenario, you can imagine, I mean, we're pretty dialed in on the message that we've got here. So a specific call of action to go to the website is logical. But you can imagine being in that slightly broader context world where you don't necessarily immediately want to just say go to the website, and you might lose that connection, that conversation. To a book is just such a value add. Anyway, sorry,
Yeah,
I
and just
interrupted there.
and again, this is the part of the conversation that is a do as I say, not as I do part of the conversation, because absolutely, like I should have a single landing page with a tripwire, whether it's a book, physical book, ebook, something that they
Right.
can go that would leverage my time and being here way better than where I'm going to give you is go to thejasоncroft.com and you'll see all the links. You'll see the link to Media Lead site. You'll see all the shows, all of that stuff. See, that's oh, okay. Well, he's obnoxious, so he said the Jason Croft. So maybe I'll remember that. But
Yeah.
if I could give them a single action, hey, here's what we've talked about today. And if you just want to launch and just get this thing going, go get my book over at, yeah, that's a way better. Oh, I'm going to remember that. Oh, the launch book. Okay, I'm going to go look for that. That's something that people can grab onto.
Yeah. It was actually ended on a good example of the perfect use case for it, because that audience, just as you don't know which people are listening to your podcast until they raise their hand, just sending to them to the website, you don't know who's there until they raise their hand either. So if you
Yeah.
can capture their details, then at least you've got a intermediary sign of life and an opportunity to keep in touch with them for the long term. But yeah, I really love what you guys are doing. The fact that you kind of take this, make it easy for people to get started and kind of orchestrate their message into something that they can use in multiple different locations, trying to intersect with those audiences. Yeah, I highly recommend people checking out the site. I'll make sure we put a link in the show notes, so as people are listening to it on a podcast player or on the website, as I say, we send an email out announcing every show, and that brings people back to the website. So there'll be a link on there to you guys and what you do. And reach out to Jason and let him know that you listen to the show here, and then I'll get that sign of life and know that it's working.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you doing that. So glad to be here. It's been a blast.
Yeah, me too. Thanks again for your time, Jason. We'll be in touch, and then we'll circle back with the audience and everyone. Thanks for listening. Check out those show notes, and then we'll catch you in the next one.